Welcome back to another episode of Prime Time. I've got Nick beside me, Jaden off the bench. Now, another great week of rugby league, great week of sport in general. We're out at Belmore on Sunday in the disgusting heat on the hill. It was 37 degrees, but we are true fans. We were on the hill supporting the boys. They got home. What did you make of Belmore?
I absolutely loved it. Suburban Grounds, back to Belmore. In the heat, it was a bit tough. We were on the hill, but there's nothing better than the Bulldogs winning at Belmore. And I think it's just like, that's what rugby league is.
They loved it. They made a whole day out of it. There was fans all over Belmore. Multicultural round too. They walked all over Belmore before getting in there. Fans loved it. If you look at their most recent episode of The Kennel, you can see it all. They vlogged it. It's awesome what they're doing. The Bulldogs social media team gets us. Slowly, more and more NRL social media teams are coming really good. But what that brings us to our fan question of the day. Jay, what's our fan question?
Fan question is from Dragons diehard Adam Camilleri. And it is, should the NRL play all their games at suburban and regional grounds?
Should the NRL play? I don't think they should play all their games at suburban grounds.
I think you make it out as if they're going to guarantee a crowd of over 30, 40,000, then maybe you can drift it away from a suburban ground. But if you're going to get 15,000 at a game...
But look, I mean, like, every time you watch a Bulldogs game at Belmore, it's packed. Manly game at Brookvale Oval, packed. Leichhardt's always packed house. Cogra, when the Dragons are doing well, not over the last few years, but Cogra usually sells out. Like, you want to go to those games because it's a better atmosphere.
And speaking as Bulldogs fans, we're at Belmore on the weekend. Suburban Grounds, the atmosphere is 10 times better. Even if it was a reduced crowd like 10,000. No one wants to go to ANZ, a core stadium, whatever it's going to be called these days, and sit there in a boring game. Let the atmosphere take over. Let crowds get into it. I mean, at Belmore on the hill, the players are 10 metres away from you.
Yeah.
You can actually see, you can see everything. You get into the game. It's just 10 times better watching it, like, for the footy.
And I think even, like, you know, they say they can legally sell however much the capacity is, 17,000 at Belmore. There's going to be 20,000 plus there. There's going to be borderline 20,000 people jumping the fence, people getting in there. You could squash in on the hill. It's a 10 times better atmosphere. I think they got to do more suburban games, especially if you're not going to be selling out your core stadiums. And when you can guarantee, like, I love watching footy at your Combank stadiums, or the new Allianz Stadium's a great place to watch footy.
Suncorp.
Yeah, Suncorp's good. You're not too far away from the action, but if you're going to be a 10, 15,000 game at a core stadium, you don't want to go there. You'd rather watch it at home.
And going into, say, like Bluebet Stadium and Shark Park, they've renovated it, they've done some upgrades. So if you're going to maybe put some money into the game, upgrade stadiums like Leichhardt, upgrade stadiums like Belmore, increase the crowd capacity there, and let them play all their games out of there.
I think everyone's saying it every year, more games at suburban grounds. That's what everyone wants to see. But like I said, a great week of rugby league. Who was your team of the week?
My team of the week was the Brisbane Broncos. Not because they played particularly well up until the last 5 minutes.
Put on 4 tries in the last
But because they covered the 13 plus for the gamblers like myself.
Yeah.
I had the Brisbane Broncos 13 plus with Reece Walsh to score. And it wasn't until at least the 75th minute where I thought the bet's going to come off. So thank you to the Brisbane Broncos. You turned up in the last 5 minutes and you covered for me.
Reece Walsh, beautiful looking bloke. And he's killing it for the Broncos.
He is killing it.
If he stays the way he's going, the Broncos are a top 4 team.
Oh,
if they stay healthy, Adam Reynolds doesn't go down like he does every year. If he stays the way he's going, they're a top 4 side.
Yeah. Who was your team of the week?
My team of the week, I got to say, was either the Bulldogs getting it done. I don't want to say that biasly, but I'm going to go the Roosters, because a lot of people were saying they're a bit underdone. They weren't going to match up against Souths. They came out, wasn't the best showing in the first half, but I think they aimed up. Jared Ria-Hargraves coming off the bench, being that enforcer. Smith coming in off the bench was a bit of a change of pace for him. I think, you know...
I think they just did that because of injury.
Yeah, but they wanted some impact off the bench, and it showed. They aimed up, and I think a lot of people counted them out. They thought, you know, the talk in the week was everything going on with the contracts, and, you know, it's one of the bigger rivalries in the NRL.
There were some losers that came out during the week going, oh, Brandon Smith's the worst signing. Is a shit signing for the Roosters. Egg on your face now.
It showed.
Keep in mind, they're still missing Tupanua, Lodge, Crichton.
Some big enforcers in the front row. And I don't know, I just think their halves combination, they're building that chemistry. Like they usually come good towards the back end of the year. It was good for them to get a win. It was one of my tips of the week, beat you in that one. So I think the Roosters were the team of the week, getting it done against South. But who was your player? Who was your standout player of the round?
Standout player, I'm going with Josh Schuster from the Manly Sea Eagles. He came in off the calf injury. Is it calf injury, Jaden?
Calf injury, yeah.
Yeah, and no one expected him to play that well. Cooper Johns did fill in well, but you just saw with Josh Schuster coming into the team, He was that X factor. He's just showed that Trbojevic, he probably prefers to play off him, and he just took it deeper into the line. He's got that big body.
He's got a bit of spark about him.
He's just skillful.
Yeah.
And you just saw that play where he put that chip over the top for Trbojevic. That's something you can't coach. That's just skill that you get given from God.
3 try assists as well.
3 tries, this little chip and chase out of nowhere, setting up Tommy Turbo. Like that differentiates you from just your standard 7 coming up the ranks. Is just that ability to go, I can put something on the toe real quick, sum things up really quickly. That's what makes Josh Schuster a real special talent. But I'm keen to get him on the show because he's a bit of a character. He went through that patch of, is he one of the lazy boys out at Manly? Is he going to live up to his potential? He's showing that he's their go-to 6.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be an interesting player for the rest of the season. I'm interested to see how he plays against South this week.
My player of the round, and you've seen him all over the news because he's leading Dally M as a winger, is Jacob Kairouz, fellow Cedar, killing it on the wing for the Bulldogs. His running meters were crazy this week. It was like over 200 running meters, Jay.
283 with 78 post-contact.
283 meters, no line breaks as well.
Yeah, no line breaks.
I mean, to do that as a winger, it doesn't make many defensive errors as well for the Bulldogs. Didn't do that many over the weekend. He's consistent under the high ball. I can't remember the last winger that was leading the Dally M. I know it's early on in the season, but he's leading on 11 points. I just think he's making a name for himself. To be passed up by Newcastle, passed up by the Cowboys, finally find a home in Belmore. The crowd loves him. The club loves him. I just think he's going to be a permanent fixture for the Bulldogs. And like leading Dally M as a winger, I can't overstate that. Who's done that?
I don't think anyone's done that. And I think he's maybe the first Lebanese to be at the top of the Dally M rankings, which I would love to see. I'd love to see a Dally M Lebanese winner.
Hazem was robbed in 04 against Joey Johns.
Yeah, I mean, Hazem El Masri, obviously the GOAT.
Yeah.
He deserved it in 04. Andrew Johns robbed him. But we'll get justice for that with Kairouz. And just to clear it up, Hammy did point out, you guys cousins?
No, we're not related. I jokingly said that. Even though I think we're from the same village, Kairouz. But no, it's good to see him doing well, the young winger. It's going to be a big season for him. But that brings me to another team that's kind of been very disappointing this season, early on in the season. The Melbourne Storm. Craig Bellamy came out and addressed it. They haven't been the Melbourne Storm of old. They've been, I know, riddled with injury. But if you watch their games, they are just making like too many errors across the park. Their possession numbers are terrible. They're making errors coming out of their half. And I don't think it's coming from the 7 or even their front rowers. It's their outside backs that have let them down. Usually they're strong in the outside backs. Players like, you know, when they had Korobetti or, you know,
Vunivalu.
Jennings that are strong, Vunivalu. They've got debutant outside backs that I don't think they're up to the standard of Craig Bellamy's Melbourne Storm standard. And I think that's where they're getting let down.
You know what you sound like? You sound like Max Kellerman. Okay, you're trying to ride off the Patriots dynasty. You're trying to ride off the Melbourne Storm dynasty. It's been 3 bad rounds. Yes, it's been uncharacteristic, and the outside backs have been pretty poor, but they've been injured. Cam Munster comes back this week. Xavier Coates was his first game back last week.
Yeah.
Olam came back last week and was absolutely killing everyone. I think he put on about 4 or 5 shots.
Pappenhausen out of the block set. Is he still rehabbing?
I think he's still rehabbing.
Yeah.
But even then, give him time. I think Meaney will push to the winger. I think George Jennings comes back in around 3-4 weeks as well. Give them time. They're going to be a top 4 team. They still play well. They just got to get it right defensively.
17 errors though against the Gold Coast.
17 errors in a game like that. You deserve to lose.
It was
if you're
40.
making 17
It was
errors.
40 degrees up in the Gold Coast.
Hey, mate, you get your 20-minute drinks break.
I'm just saying, I would hate to be the West Tigers. You already lost 3 in a row. Now you got to verse Melbourne in Melbourne with Cam Munster back. I'm going Melbourne 13 plus.
Well, a lot of people have been coming at us because we've been taking a shit on the West Tigers since round 1.
Listen to their up-and-coming games, right?
Yeah.
So they've got Melbourne in Melbourne, loss. Brisbane in Brisbane, loss.
Jeez.
Para, then they've got the bye, and then Manly and Penrith.
Well, surely they're okay against the bye. But, okay, if you listen to that, their next 4 games, or next 3 games, Melbourne in Melbourne, and Melbourne just getting Munster back. Parramatta at CommBank Stadium, not winning that.
Not winning
And
that.
Brisbane at Suncorp.
Brisbane at Suncorp. Mate, they're going 0-6.
What do you think? Okay, Melbourne are desperate for a win. Brisbane are firing. You're not beating Brisbane at Suncorp. Maybe they're a chance.
I'm not doing this to take a shit on them. I actually like, yes, you could say it's a bad run. You know, you got teams that are in decent form, but like we said last week, you got the wooden spoon last year. If you go 0-6 to start the season,
Maybe.
surely the pressure's on.
I think if you reach 0-10 after that Penrith game or after that Manly
Who do
game,
they have after the bye?
They've got Manly, and then they've got Penrith.
Mainly at Brookvale?
Nah, at home, at Campbelltown.
Okay, geez. Well, that's a saving grace.
Keep in mind though, so Para's next 2 games, so Para is 0-3. Para have Penrith and then Roosters. So come round 6, it could be 0-6 for Para or 0-6 for Tigers?
Both on Easter Monday. I'm back in Para there.
No team wants to go 0-6. You're almost riding off your season.
But if you do go 0-10 as the West Tigers, Tim Sheens, tap on the shoulder, get out of here.
Get
Go.
Robbie in.
Go home.
Get Robbie or Benji in. They got to do something. I mean, like we said, each week, it is still too early in the season to say so. But once you approach an 0-6 or, winning 1 from 10 and struggling as a club, something's going to happen. They might move Dewey to fullback.
No, he's moved to fullback.
Yeah, and they're going to put Laurie off the bench.
Yeah, that's
Which I don't think makes any sense at all. But, obviously this Brooks and Dewey in the halves isn't working. They're going to try and do something. Maybe Wakeham coming in at 7's going to make a difference. I don't know. They need something to go right for him.
Yeah, no, I think they're desperate for a win, and they're not going to get it anytime soon. And making Dewey go to fullback and changing your whole team that you probably spent the whole preseason with isn't going to do it.
Now, going from the shittest team in the NRL to the team that's firing at the moment, the Dolphins. Wayne Bennett's Dolphins. They can't go wrong. They're 3 in a row. Again, early in the season. Did you think looking at the season when the season started going, the Dolphins and the Broncos going up against each other is going to be one of the games of the rounds?
Well, everyone tipped them for the wooden spoon. They said they recruited so poorly. All the Melbourne players, they got it too old. But they've proven everyone wrong. FELISE Kaufusi is coming out and absolutely killing everyone, leading the team by example.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. FELISE Kaufusi, he's facing Judiciary tonight. But if you look back at it, I think Wayne Bennett's gone to FELISE Kaufusi and said, I'm giving you permission to go out and absolutely belt people. Like, look at his recent games. He's absolutely been levelling other players. He's coming up out of the line and putting shots on. Look what he did to Brandon Smith. Bang, put a shot on him. Same game, Egan Butcher, put a shot on him. Then he did it to Hudson Young against Canberra. And he's always been on the edge of suspension. Is he coming in late? He put another absolute shot on to Jackson Hastings, found himself in the Judiciary. He's coming out with a purpose to shake up the other teams, leading by example as a veteran of the team. I think Wayne Bennett's gone, listen, son, do what you can, make a statement out there for the team.
He's facing 4 weeks suspension, but where I love the internet, they've given him a nickname. The nickname is Finn Diesel.
Yeah, he's the enforcer.
He's the enforcer of the Dolphins,
Yeah.
Finn Diesel.
And he's PH Finn.
PH Finn.
Yeah.
He's come out and absolutely obliterated everyone. And it's nice to see that, Phil Gould's come out and said, if he gets suspended, I'll be disgusted.
Well, they compared his charge to someone else in the round that got a grade 1 charge. He got a grade 2 charge, which he could be facing up to 4 matches.
Yeah.
Is it? They're going to, in the Judiciary tonight, they're trying to downgrade it where he would just see a fine. I think he'll be playing this week, which means it's all hands on deck for the Dolphins against the Broncos.
He'd be up against Kurt Capewell.
So opposing second rower, Kurt Capewell.
Expect a big shot on Capewell this
Except
week.
a big shot on Capewell. I'd be worried if I was Kurt, because what? Ezra, man, you're going to have to protect him, against FELISE. You're going to have to, if you've been watching the Broncos, they've been running some sharp lines on that left side.
Yep, Kurt Capewell left side.
So I'd be avoiding those hole runners.
I mean, Kurt Capewell's going to have to run a glory hole and avoid getting hit by FELISE
contact
Kaufusi.
and avoid a big shot from FELISE. But another thing that caught our eye last round was Canberra Raiders. They've been letting me down in terms of tips.
They finally got their first win last
They
week.
finally, because I thought Cronulla were going to get one on them. Cronulla, with Nico Hines coming back this week, they're looking better. But it was a weird one from Jack Wyden. If you saw this play on the weekend, we'll show a vision of it. Is where he pushes his player out of the way. I don't know if it caused some distraction. He pushes his player. I don't know if it was out of anger or frustration. This then caused the try on the other side of the field. It was an angry push.
I don't understand the push. I mean, if it was strategy and he pushed him as a distraction, credit to you.
Yeah.
But if it was just a push out of frustration, it's like, well, Jack, what's going on, bro?
I think it was either, listen, kid, get out of the way. I need the ball. You're in the way, son. Or it was, Melbourne started the block play trend or, the hit, turn around and pass. This is I'm going to push my player, get the attention over here while we score on the other side.
And you saw, what's the Raiders centre?
Tomoko.
He scored on that play. So
Yeah.
if it was a strategy play, great work. And let's see it happen next week. I mean, I'd hate to be the front rower that keeps getting shoved by Wyden because it looks pretty forceful.
He gave the Rook a bit of whiplash.
I don't think you're going to see Sam Walker shove Jared Warrior-Hargraves.
No, not anytime soon.
So I think it's got to be a player like Jack Wyden that has that big boy strength in him.
Well, looking at the Gold Coast Titans, a shit story to come out of this week is Sammy Verrills out for 6 to 10 weeks. Fractured collarbone. Now, shout out to NRL Physio on Twitter because you get to see where they're going to be putting the plates in his collarbone. It's rough to see. It's fractured. It's almost broken in half. But this kid cannot catch a break. He's a quality 9. Nick, you played with him when you were over at Manly. Big raps on him because He played well when he was at Manly. Played well when he was at the Roosters. He just hasn't had enough games under his belt. He's always fracturing his sternum, breaking his thumb, having a wrist issue, ACL. He just never had a clean run of games. It'd be perfect for, the Gold Coast to have a hooker like him, a young hooker, but he's always just missing these 6-10 rounds here and there. Hopefully, after this injury, he's seen some clean. I don't know if he's just got to do the Jared Mallon, maybe even the Josh Hodgson, take some good time off. Get yourself right away from rugby league, make sure you're healthy as possible, and then start getting into contact again.
I mean, he is one of the most unlucky players of all time. A young career, wins an NRL Grand Final, next year ACL. Comes back, breaks his thumb. Comes back again, does his collarbone. So, it's just a run of bad injuries. Probably one of the most unlucky players
There's
ever.
been some other unlucky players, though. Jarrell Yaya, fractured your leg, never play again.
Alex McKinnon's up there too.
McKinnon, end up in a wheelchair.
Besides career-ending injuries, I'm saying, just normal injuries, he's pretty unlucky.
Yeah, Simon Dwyer can't move his arm anymore.
Yeah, they're much more unlucky in terms of life.
I'd rather be Sammy Verrills in this, but I want to see him on the field. That's all I'm saying. We want to see Sammy Verrills playing good footy back to his best. Fingers crossed it's a quick recovery for him. But like I was saying, I want to preview this Dolphins-Brisbane game. It's the game of the round.
Battle of Brisbane.
Night. The Battle of Brisbane at Suncorp. It's going to be a massive game. I think that'll be a sellout. Like we said, you want to take games to suburban games. This is one, the way that the first rounds are going, that you want at a Suncorp. It'll probably sell out. Any highlights for you, who to look at? I mean, Adam Reynolds has been great. The fullback in Reece Walsh has been unbelievable for the Brisbane Broncos.
I feel like this is a game where people are going to think that the Dolphins are who they thought they were before the season. Okay. Brisbane are just a much stronger team across the park. Dolphins have played well, but who have they versed? Besides the Roosters, they got a Canberra team in horrific weather up in KO Stadium. Then they versed Newcastle without half their team last week, and they just scraped by for a win there.
So this is a real test for the Dolphins.
This is a real test at Suncorp. I know it's a Dolphins home game at Suncorp, but it's a Brisbane home ground.
Hamiso Tabuai-Fidow.
Great pronunciation.
I know, as we do each week, because we've got raps on him. You didn't really see this level of consistency at the Cowboys. I don't know if it was whether he was getting enough opportunity at the Cowboys, but he's been a standout for the Dolphins. He's everywhere on the field, scoring tries, backing up. You can't fault him. So it's going to be an awesome matchup seeing Walsh against Fidow. Who's going to get the better of each other? What
I'm looking forward to is just like a newfound rivalry. I mean, Gold Coast, when they were introduced into the competition, everyone goes, oh, Gold Coast, Brisbane, but that never lived up to the hype. I hope this is a close game, just so it kind of starts that kind of battle of Brisbane rivalry, which the NRL kind of needs.
Yeah, honourable mention of rivalries, because we'll get in. I want to go through the top 5 rivalries in the NRL.
Australia.
Top 5 rivalries in Australia, but the honourable mentions, like you said, Brisbane and Cowboys usually have a decent rivalry. I mean, in terms of Australia-wide, Collingwood-Essendon have a really decent rivalry. Manly versus Melbourne all those years ago. Remember the big punch-on with the Stewart brothers?
That kind of
everyone jumping in.
Dylan Walker, when he got bashed, they kind of dragged that Manly-Melbourne rivalry.
You got Nick Kyrgios, Tennis Australia. They never really get on. They're always going at each other. But I'll kick us off with the top 5 Australian rivalries. I'm going to go into the A-League. I was over at the Sydney FC, Western Sydney Wanderers game. It is pumping. Crowds are getting up. Yes, they got bashed 4-0, but I'm going to start us off with the Sydney FC versus the Western Sydney Wanderers. You don't have to be a big football fan to know that the derby gets up. Crowds go, whether it's at a game in Western Sydney, it's played at CommBank Stadium, or if it's at Allianz Stadium, the fans get right into it. There's flares going off in the crowd. I saw a Western Sydney goal, or multiple goals on the weekend. All of a sudden, people start throwing shit from the Sydney FC side, and they're throwing shit into the crowd. You don't get that in many other codes. The fans, they love it.
I think just to put into perspective how big that game was for the A-League. So over the weekend, you had Macarthur versus Melbourne City, crowd 2,100. You had Brisbane Roar versus Western United, crowd 3,400. And then you had Western Sydney versus Sydney with 28,900.
Yeah, and you just know A-League fans are rowdy. Yeah. That's what I think rugby league and AFL are missing. Maybe less the AFL, but just rowdy fans are going to throw flares on the field. I love that shit.
Yeah, it builds an atmosphere, and I think the A-League need more of it, but that's one of the better rivalries in Australia.
And that takes us to number 4, the oldest rivalry in the NRL, Roosters versus the Rabbitohs. You just saw it on the weekend. It was a packed crowd at Allianz. It's one of the greatest rivalries in the NRL. It goes back to 1908. Every time they play, it's bad blood. You've got Joey Manu and Latrell going at each other, and now you've got the Instagram pages going at each other. So it's nice to see the rivalries transcend generations.
Yeah, I think like it lived up to the hype on the weekend. Joey Mano again with an eye socket, a bit of a blowout, but they just get up for it. The media drums it up every week, every time that they play, and it's bad blood between the teams. There's also the case of poaching players from one another. Suwali was over there. They go and grab him. They've grabbed a lot of players.
Crichton.
Angus Crichton. You know, even going back to the Brian Fletchers. So it's a rivalry that's lasted many years. It's going to continue going on into the future, but you love to see it, and it always lives up to the hype. Next one for me, rivalry number 3. I'm going the All Blacks versus the Wallabies. Now, we always take a shit on rugby union because it's probably struggling in Australia, but international rugby, you cannot fault it. It's always packing out 80,000 here in Sydney at least, and it's one thing that Australian rugby has for itself. The Wallabies going up against the All Blacks. We just want to get the better of the people across the Tasman.
Is it considered a rivalry if you lose every game, though? I don't think the Aussies have won a Bledisloe Cup in about 20 years.
I mean, over the last 5 to 10 years, it's been tough for the Wallabies, but you can't count us out every time we play against the All Blacks. It's a great rivalry. We got a mate, Dan, who live and die by the Wallabies.
Yeah.
He always gets up for it. He's always backing the Wallabies winners. I mean, in terms of rugby rivalries, what do you get up for in international rugby anymore? The All Blacks game, maybe the British and Irish Lions coming across, the Springboks maybe when they come over and play here, but that's about it.
It's always nice to see Australia get around the Wallabies, especially when they're versus the All Blacks. No one likes New Zealanders, especially here in Australia. I hate the All Blacks when they play them, and that's why it's one of the greatest rivalries. But that takes us to number 2, the greatest rivalry in the AFL, Carlton versus Collingwood. Now, they had Carlton and Collingwood play in round 1 against other teams, and they both packed out 80,000. When these two teams play each other, it's easily 90,000 at the MCG, and these crowds are going at each other.
They hate each other.
It goes back, another one that goes back all the way into the early 1900s, and you just see when they're playing, the crowds hate each other, the players hate each other, and it's just something that you see in the AFL. If you're going to go to an AFL game, go to a Carlton-Collingwood game, and it epitomises what AFL is.
Number 1, the best sporting rivalry in Australia has to be New South Wales versus Queensland in the state of origin. Now, I don't care if you're from Adelaide, Perth, what sport you watch, everyone gets up for origin, whether it's game on. I think it's one of the most watched sporting events in Australia. It's you just have to, like, I remember growing up as a kid, everyone would get around, you're going to your mate's house, or you just want to get behind your state. Like that's what it was all about.
It's always the talk of the town, and I don't think there's any other sport in the world, let alone Australia, where you'll get 2 club teammates who absolutely love each other, and then as soon as Origin starts, they'll have absolute disgust and want to kill each other on the field.
They hate each other. They hate each other on that game, and it stays on the field, takes away from clubland. The weirdest thing is you're going to get injuries out of that game because it's so physical. It's one of the most physical games of rugby league, and that's what the rivalry is all about. They bleed blue, they bleed maroon. And I mean, we grew up in the 2000s watching us get dominated by Queensland, and we're going through a period now where we hope we
should be winning. Yeah,
we should be winning, but I mean, Queensland is still getting some on us. So it's one of the best rivalries in Australian history, and it will continue to be going forward.
Yeah, I don't see anything ever topping it. Strictly just for the hate that New South Wales and Queenslanders have for each other. Even when you got people like Buzz Rothfield just saying, that's a Queenslander for you. It's just stuff that just will last forever.
Yeah, and we'll be there covering New South Wales and Queensland, whether it's in Sydney, in Perth, or at Suncorp this year. Looking forward to that. But that brings us to AFL this week, because they kicked off probably a great round across the board. There was a draw in there. There was some tight games, back and forth. The Collingwood game was unbelievable. What did you make of the first round of the AFL?
It was great to see the AFL back. I think the draw was stupid. I still hate the fact that there's draws in the AFL. I don't understand it.
Remember when there was a draw in the grand final?
Yeah, dumbest thing ever.
It was just like,
they had to replay it or something, didn't they?
Yeah, they replayed the grand final. Why can't we just get a result?
At least do the extra time like the NRL. I mean, I love American sports that there's always a result. You're going to have a winner.
In the NBA, there's always a result. They go to overtime until there's a result.
I mean, NFL, they sometimes have draws, but that's after a lengthy period of extra time. Give the players an extra 5-10 minutes and let them see who wins.
What would you do, 10 minutes of overtime?
10 minutes, just sudden death, or even if it's golden goal. Just do something.
No, you can't do golden goal.
But big thing out of the AFL, the crowd numbers from round 1. Absolutely massive. Jaden, what were the 3 big games that happened last week?
It was Richmond and Carlton.
Yeah, Richmond Carlton did 88,084. Geelong versus Collingwood, 86,595. And Essendon Hawks, 68,691.
I mean, you got your big teams, Richmond, Carlton. You know they're going to draw crowds, but that's grand final crowds. Collingwood, Geelong. But Essendon, Hawthorn getting nearly 70,000 crowd. Like, that's not what you expect from the AFL. You think they're the more mediocre clubs. They're not performing that well, but their fans still turn up. I know we went into it last week. AFL's greater than the NRL. I feel like this is where it just shows. Like, that's a massive round one.
Yeah, I don't know. AFL fans just get it. They create the atmosphere. We miss that here in Sydney, and we need bigger crowds like that. I'm looking forward to going to a Collingwood game this year.
Yeah.
Judging off the weekend, Cox in good form. I think it could be their year. So if you look ahead to round 2, I want to highlight the game of the week. Geelong versus Carlton this Thursday night.
Yeah, mate, that should be an interesting game. Carlton coming off the draw, Geelong coming off a loss. I'm actually going to go with Carlton. I just think Geelong, they're still on that premiership high, and Carlton have a lot more to prove. So I'll be tipping Carlton for that game.
Well, I'm sure it's going to draw a massive crowd as well.
I reckon 80,000.
I guess we'll see. But that brings us to a preview of the round of NRL this week, starting with probably the game of the round. I know we've said game of the round a lot this week. That's because we've got a banger up in Brisbane. But Para versus Penrith. Where are you going with this one?
I'm taking Penrith coming off the bye. Para, look, they've still got Ryan Madison back this week, but I just feel like...
I mean, Madison's name on the extended bench was a bit weird.
No, I think he got put into the starting side.
Starting side?
But you just got to take Penrith. They're the stronger team. Grand final rematch, coming off the bye. Take Penrith head-to-head here.
Yeah, Penrith for me as well. Richard's gone with Parramatta.
Surprise.
I just think he thinks they're due for a win. Jay, who are you going to go with?
Yeah, I'm going Penrith.
Penrith.
Penrith are too strong.
Penrith, possibly a close game, maybe in either team 1-12. Then you got the poor Tigers up against the Melbourne Storm with some significant players coming back. Munster back this week. Where do you see this one going?
Melbourne 13+. I don't think you can even question it. The Tigers are putrid shit, as A. Huncho would say. So Melbourne 13+, Tigers, I'm sorry, you're going 0-4.
You'd hate to face Melbourne after a loss.
Yeah, after a Craig Bellamy spray. He looked livid last week. Again, 17 errors. They're going to look to come correct that this week. It might be a bloody training run for him. At Melbourne, at Amy Park. The West Tigers are going to have to mix it up. Could be a surprise. Could be closer than everyone thinks. But it's a resounding Melbourne from all of us there. The Dolphins versus the Broncos.
We spoke about this earlier. Dolphins are playing well, but I think they're going to get found out this week. You got to tip Brisbane here.
I think Brisbane are going to be too strong again. I think their forward pack has been very strong for them. Adam Reynolds steering them around. It's going to be a battle of the fullbacks, but I'm going to go Brisbane as well. I think they're going to prove themselves to be too strong, and they're going to take that number 1 spot in the NRL. We've gone with all Brisbane Broncos. Then that brings us to another Gold Coast clash. The Gold Coast Titans versus Cowboys.
Cowboys were very disappointing last week, and they've still got their players missing.
Are the Cowboys pretenders?
No, Drinkwater's out. Peter Hicker's out. I think Tamaloa was injured later in the game last week. I'm still going to take them head-to-head this week. I know they're on the road in Gold Coast, but you saw Gold Coast. They'll win a game, they'll lose a game. That's their entire history. So I'm taking taking the Cowboys.
Why the hell did they take Kieran Foran off the field last week? He was livid. Did you not see where...
Yeah, I don't know why.
They raced him off the field early on in the game, and you bring the guy over to be an experienced halfback and lead the team around, and you take him off the field during a pivotal stage in the game. He had the shits. I don't think they'll be doing that this week.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they just didn't want him to tear his hamstring in that heat. That's the only reason I can understand. Maybe he thought his hamstring would tear off the bone.
I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Richard Kairouz has gone with the Gold Coast Titans.
I mean, he got Gold Coast right last week.
I know. I just think he's maybe trying to pull too many upsets over us. But I guess we'll see. Rabbitohs versus Sea Eagles.
Good matchup. We've spoken about this one as well. I think Souths will prove that they're the better team. Manly have had an easier run. I mean, Para are a good team, but they're not a great team this year. And Souths coming off a loss. They're going to need to bounce back. I'll take them for the win.
I'm taking Souths with the bounce back. They look strong against the Rabbitohs. I think they need to do it for a lengthier period, like stay consistent across the park. Cody Walker needs to probably inject himself a bit more dominantly. I think he went a bit quiet against the Roosters. So I'm going to pick him to have a big game. I reckon Cody Walker man of the match this week. I'm going to go with Souths as well.
You've got Turbo versus Troll there as well, so that'll be a good matchup.
Huge matchup. I don't think it's going to be a blowout either side. Probably going to be a Souths 1-12 game. But again, Schuster playing well. I guess we'll see. But I'm going Rabbitohs. Dad's picked Manly there.
Another upset pick from him.
Yeah. Okay, this one over in New Zealand. Our Bulldogs versus the New Zealand Warriors. Can they back it up, the Bulldogs?
Yes, they can. They were great last week up until about maybe the 70th minute mark when they let the Tigers come back. but they're looking better. They just got more talent across the park. They got more X factors. Kickout was running the ball well. Kairouz is a meter eater. So I think the Warriors are inconsistent as well.
Yeah,
so
the only thing I'm worried about is the Warriors in New Zealand. They're always a tough time.
Chance is back too at fullback.
Yeah, that's a big in for the Warriors. I'm going to go with the Bulldogs to try and keep up the momentum. That's going to be a big thing for them. They don't want to get another loss here, go win, loss, win, loss. So I'm going to go the Bulldogs. Richard's gone with the Warriors at home. Again, picking upsets.
Smart plays the Bulldogs.
Yeah. Newcastle versus the Canberra Raiders. Two teams that have been very inconsistent.
I thought Ponga was going to play this week, but apparently he might retire. So I don't know what's going on there. So I'm going to go with Canberra. I think they had a good win last week against the Sharks.
Is that because of the 11-day rule?
No. He's just
instituted?
sitting out.
More than 11.
Because Brayley's back this week. So that's a good in for Newcastle.
So, yeah, the NRL given the mandatory, you have to sit out 11 days if you fail the HIA.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So I don't think that's in play. I think just personally, maybe Ponga wants to take a bit of time off with accumulating so many head knocks. But juggling between Newcastle and Canberra, I think Canberra had a decent showing. I think their pack is probably going to be stronger here. And like I said, Saifidi being out, I don't think they're going to be able to aim up. I'm going to go with Canberra as well.
There's a few big ins here as well. So we've got Tyson Frizzell named on extended bench, Kurt Mann, Jaden Brayley, and then for Canberra playing his first game, Josh Papali.
Yeah, Papali being back's massive.
Yeah.
You got to take Canberra.
Papali'i, boys. Come
Papali'i.
on. Get with the times, kids. No, okay. Dragons and Sharks.
I'm going to go the Sharks. I think I'm going to tip them again. Coming off a loss, I love the bounce back wins. You always got to, Dragons, they were terrible in that last 10 minutes against the Broncos. And Sharks get Nico Hines back.
Big in Nico Hines.
Dalian medalist returns. Take the Sharks head to head. I wouldn't even mind seeing them win 13 plus.
I'm going to go Sharks with Ronaldo. Ronaldo's been scoring a bit of tries there on the left wing. He's been killing it. And Nico Hines being back, he's going to want to make a statement for Medallion. He's probably going to try kick Kairouz off the top of the leaderboard. So I want to see him have a big showing. Richard's gone the Dragons. It is at Wynn, though.
Yeah.
It's at Wynn Stadium. So, I don't know. And Roosters getting the bye. Well-deserved rest after that big physical game against the Rabbitohs. They're going to take that going in. Maybe we could see a Roosters player coming in on the show, whether it be a Sammy Walker or a Victor Radley.
Yeah.
While they got the bye, while they got the feed up in Bondi. I think I've seen them Insta stories. They've been relaxing. But, I don't know. Richard's been leading the tips on 13 from 24. Me and you on 12 together.
I've had a bit of a shocker to start the season. But
as you do.
I feel like I'm going to tip 8 from 8 this week.
I
got a good feeling.
Now we're going to go around the grounds to international sports as we do to wrap up the show. It's been some interesting stories out of the world of sport. This one with Andrew Wiggins, Nick. Now, he's taken some personal leave, Andrew Wiggins. Can you explain why?
There's some malicious rumours that have come out saying that he's taken personal leave. He's been out for a month, and they've cited the reason that he's been out, that his girlfriend...
This is allegedly.
Yeah, alleged. That his girlfriend, I think it's Michelle Johnson, he's had an affair with Andrew's best friend. And one of Andrew's kids is actually not his, it's the best friend's.
Now, this could be a vicious Twitter rumour, but geez, I would be shaken up. I don't know if I could play basketball. If your best friend is banging your missus, and now you don't even know if it's your son...
No, daughter.
Daughter?
Yeah.
That's rough. That's rough.
I mean,
I'd be taking some personal leave.
The girlfriend did come out on Twitter and shut down these rumours saying the internet's disgusting, it's a sad place. So,
Who's the guy starting the rumour? That's what I want to know. How does that rumour even...
Let's bring him in.
Yeah, I mean, the best mate's just been slandered, but I mean, you don't take personal leave off.
I mean, it's just things that, you can't really put to sleep as well. Like, that's just going to be hanging around Andrew Wiggins for the rest of his life now. So, like, even though it's a rumour, it's disgusting. Like, what do you do? And, like, I feel bad for talking about it, but it is what it is.
I hope it's not true, and if it is, his best mate's a scumbag.
Yeah.
And I hope Andrew Wiggins finds some peace and comes back and kills it on the basketball court and puts rumours to bed.
I think the only way we can solve this is a Jerry Springer episode.
Jerry Springer or You Are Not the Father, get him on Maury Povich, and then that could put the rumours to bed and get him playing his best basketball.
I think maybe we'll get Steve Kerr to be the role of Maury Povich.
Yeah.
And just let him come back to a nice Golden State team.
Big signing in the NFL, Aaron Rodgers, after his time in the darkness, he had a bit of a retreat away in the darkness, came away, it was a darkness retreat, he did not see any light for, a few days?
Yeah, he just shuts himself off. He said he was going into it 90% retired.
Yeah.
He's come out and allegedly he's going to be traded to the New York Jets.
Yeah, so he's going to be signing with the New York Jets. He's found his new home. He came out and said that's where he wants to be playing his football. Green Bay essentially said they don't want him to be their QB going forward.
I think they've had Jordan Love as a backup now for I think 3 or 4 years, and it's just time to kind of part ways. They haven't drafted wide receivers well. They got 2 young ones last year. They let Devontae Adams go.
Coming off a disappointing season for the
And
Packers.
the Jets are a stacked team right now. They're a great franchise. They've got a great defense, and they've got great wide receivers. They signed Alan Lazard, Aaron Rodgers' best friend. So him going to New York makes sense, and it'll be nice to see him in the AFC.
I think he's still got a few more years left in him.
Yeah.
Coming up, 2 years ago being the MVP, having a bit of a disappointing season last year, not having the full backing of the franchise. I think he's going to have a good season at the Jets.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll see where it goes. Could be another MVP season.
I don't know what the hold-up is in not trading him either. I think they're just trying to finalise what was a
They want
second,
the best value for him.
second or third round pick or something like that.
He's 39, so it's a bit...
Yeah, Brady played till 45.
So, I don't know. I think at least 2 more seasons left in him. In New York, who knows what could happen. Now, another big talking point was massive UFC main event on the weekend. Usman versus Rocky Edwards. It was great to see. Usman was a favourite, like
$1.50.
$1.50, $1.30 favourite. Midway through the fight, he was still $1.40. I think we got on. We thought he's taking this fight. Some people came out on Twitter and said it could have been a draw, but I don't know. Leon Edwards with his takedown defence, it was interesting to see, but he was unequivocally the winner, and now he's in talks to versus Colby Covington, and he's saying he possibly doesn't even deserve that. But I want to point out, the UFC are just getting it right. They're putting on banger fight after banger fight. If you look at Volkanovski earlier in the year against, Makachev. Who else did they have?
John Jones versus Cyril Gane. They just had Usman versus Edwards, and then next week, or I think the week after.
Pereira versus Adesanya. They've successfully...
McGregor, Chandler.
And McGregor to have his return fight later in the year. They're successfully putting on good main events that people are invested in around the world that want to be tuning in. Whereas if you look at boxing, you get 1 or 2 good fights a year. What was the last biggest fight, really? Okay, apart from Australians loving Tim Tszyu and getting behind him there, Jake Paul versus Tommy Fury?
Yeah, that's massive.
How often does Canelo Alvarez fight or get up for it? Maybe Tank versus Garcia, that everyone's starting to get around that on social media, but they're not drawing nearly as enough numbers. And UFC are successfully, I think, overtaken boxing as a promotion.
It's too hard with boxing because there's so many different belts and so many different corporations involved in it to set up that
I
dream
think the
fight.
UFC just market their fighters better. They've kind of incorporated that WWE style into the UFC, and boxing, they just don't have the names anymore. Yes, you got Tyson Fury, but other than that, what are you left with? Jake Paul?
Yeah.
I love Jake Paul, but I don't want to really see him fight that often.
Jake Paul's the best thing that happened to boxing in the last... like Tyson Fury, every time he fights, everyone gets up for it, He could be fighting in the near future as well.
Usyk.
Yeah,
Should be a big fight.
against an Usyk fight. I think they just settled on a 70-30 split. But I just think UFC are getting it right.
That UFC have had the best start they've ever had to a year, and now they're going to have their best superstar ever, Conor McGregor, have a fight later in the year. They're way further ahead than boxing will ever think that they can come close to.
Man, the International Fight Week in Vegas for UFC, they're rumoured to have 3 title fights already, and that's John Jones, Volkanovski, and Edwards again. So
we're getting down to Vegas?
It's a stacked fight card.
Yeah, I just think that they're getting it right. And boxing, I don't know what they need to do. I think Jake Paul is looking at, creating some central figure like the UFC does that, can actually delegate fights and put fights on that people want to see. Not just having individual promoters trying to get the best out or, trying to get people elevator fights. You know what I mean?
You don't think Garcia's a big draw?
No, he's a draw, but it's just...
I've seen him on TikTok. He fights blindfolded.
Yeah, I know, but I'm just saying it's not nearly as enough promotion as the UFC is getting. Or I'm not seeing it nearly enough. But that brings us to tennis to wrap up. Now, Indian Wells got off to a bit of a rocky start because Novak's not playing. If you win this title at the Indian Wells, is it a consolation one? Because Novak's been killing it at Australian Open.
Well, that's the thing. Nadal didn't play and Djokovic didn't play.
So Alcaraz is just walking through everyone.
Alcaraz just beat Medvedev in the final, absolutely killed him. It was actually weird to see because Medvedev's supposed to be a great player, former world number 1. But now Alcaraz has won this competition and has been crowned world number 1. And the media are just crowning him as the next king of tennis. They've said he's overtaken Djokovic, all this talk coming out.
To do it at such a young age, though, it's a massive achievement.
But you can't... Novak was number 1.
Yeah.
You can't really say he's taken the title off him by banning Djokovic from playing. It's like winning an interim title. Are you really the champion?
It's like in the UFC when you win an interim belt.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, wait till they are allowed to play each other. Well, they'll come across each other at the French Open.
Probably. But the way you look at Alcaraz, he's won the US Open and the Indian Wells. Both competitions, Djokovic wasn't allowed to play, and going into those competitions, Djokovic was the best player in the world. So how do you weigh up his wins?
To be fair, Medvedev was on a 21 match winning streak, including a win over Djokovic. So he's no easy beat.
No,
So
it's not at all. Mate, full credit to Alcaraz. Everyone has raps on him wherever you go. I mean, if he didn't pull out of the Australian Open, he's probably going to be a force in the Oz Open. He's the best young tennis player going around.
I'm just saying that you can't crown him king
Until he beats Novak.
while Novak Djokovic, the real king, is still there
But
playing.
is Novak now out of contention of being number one? Like,
No,
what does
I
Novak
think
have to do
he
to...
falls back, I think, to 2 or 3. Like, he's still up there. It's just he just doesn't get the ranking points from this competition.
Well, it's going to be an interesting French Open because I think it's rumoured that Nick Kyrgios will be making his return from his knee injury. I think most players will be on deck for the French Open. It's on clay. Nadal's not 100%, so I don't see him winning the French Open, even though it's on clay.
Alcaraz should be favourite for the French Open, but I wouldn't mind seeing Novak wipe the floor with him.
Yeah, I think Novak's still number 1 and Alcaraz number 2 in terms of betting odds.
I guess we'll see. It's going to be an interesting French Open. That's the next big Grand Slam. But it's going to be an interesting week of sport. We'll be covering all on top of it. Stay tuned to our socials for our multis of the week. I'll be taking my try scorers for the week. Take a look at Jon-Bernard K, at the JBK Show, and tune into Picklebet and Pickle Studios on TikTok to see the latest as we cover sport. And we'll be trying to stay as topical as possible when things come up. It's going to be a big week of sport, big round of rugby league. We'll be looking forward to it. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of Primetime.